All right, can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Perfect. Well, welcome to the 2022 Water Innovation Prize Final Pitch event. The team is super excited to have you here, both in person and virtually. The mission of the Water Innovation Prize is to inspire and promote solutions to global water challenges by developing and supporting emerging entrepreneurs. We know that innovative solutions to our imminent global water challenges, excuse me, sorry. We know that there are solutions to our imminent global water challenges, and we're excited to hear from the teams today to be inspired by and to support some of those innovations. Before we get started, we want to thank everyone who has supported the event, especially our amazing team. You can see them all here throughout the room, maybe even like raise your hand. They've done such a great job over the last 6 months. Yes, thank you so much. They've been working extremely hard, and we would also like to thank all of our sponsors. So we'll take a minute to do that. First, we have our Sapphire sponsors, which includes JWAFs, Security Lab, PepsiCo, Xylem, Watts Water Energy, and Cargill. Next, we have our Aquamarine sponsors, MIT Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, MIT Office of Graduate Education, the Martin Trust Center, the Water Research Foundation, Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, Science Water, and finally, Blue Tech Research. And last but not least, we have our turquoise sponsors, which includes the MIT Climate and Sustainability Consortium, the MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative, the MIT Legatum Center, Mezzanine Ventures, and the COOP, or co-op. There's still sort of like mixed reviews on that, but thank you to them. This year, we're excited to award $50,000 in prize money. It's particularly exciting because last year was actually $35,000. So we're really excited to be able to award these wonderful teams and wonderful entrepreneurs. First place will be $20,000. Second place will be $15,000. Third will be 10, and then we also have an audience choice award. So make sure that you stick around for that, and that will be $5,000. All right, well now I will turn it over to Jane, and she's gonna go through the agenda and introduce our first speaker. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yep. Okay. So tonight we have really exciting program plan. First, we're going to hear from our keynote speaker, Aaron Rothman, CEO and founder of Storm Sensor. After that, we're going to hear the first 3 pitches. We'll take a break and hear a little bit about the MIT Water Club, and then we'll hear our final 3 pitches. After that, we will hear our second keynote speaker, George Hawkins, the founder and CEO of Moonshot Missions. And during that time, our judges will deliberate, and afterward, we will share the awards and have a dessert. So we're all happy that you can join us. So I'm really pleased to introduce Aaron Rothman, CEO and founder of Storm Sensor. Storm Sensor is a climate technology startup with the objective of mitigating climate risk by creating intelligent water waste infrastructure. Aaron has about 15 years of stormwater consulting experience all across the United States, and Storm Sensor was founded in 2015. So she launched the company partly on a dare or a challenge from colleagues when a challenge arose and she dared to challenge the status quo of the way of she was doing things. So I think whether you're inspiring student founder or you're working in a company, she has lessons to offer us from her unfiltered journey as a founder. So please welcome me in joining Aaron to the stage. You can use this clicker. Okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Erin. As Jane said, I founded Storm Sensor in 2015. Storm Sensor works with cities across the country to track how water moves through storm, sewer, and coastal systems. And then we map that movement to climate and weather events. I'm 41 years old. I founded the company when I was 35. However, I've had companies and run companies and sold things since I was about 7. I used to be an environmental consultant. I was managing principal and vice president and principal scientist at a small environmental consulting company in Seattle, then at SLR, which is a large global consultancy. And then, of course, I founded my own consulting company while I took a gap year to figure out what to do with my life, which ended up being Storm Sensor. I love water. I love data. I love the stories that data can tell about water. And I never had that moment that everyone else seems to have where they knew what they were going to do with the rest of their lives and they found that. However, I do feel that now when I'm at Storm Sensor. It took about 4 years before I felt like I was doing the right thing, but I got there. So when you found a company, there is a story that you get to tell the world about what you're doing and how you've done it. Generally speaking, it's a straight line or a hockey stick to success. Storm Sensors, we founded the company in 2015 and prototyped our first network. I hired my first team members and we built our first sensor. I bootstrapped until 2018 when I raised $1.2 million. I was trying to raise $750,000, so that was pretty exciting. And I got my first paycheck that May. In 2019, we deployed in or sold networks in every region of the country and started raising our Series A. However, COVID hit in 2020, about a week before we were supposed to close our round. That raise fell apart. I had to furlough my team, but managed to raise $2 million seed within the next month and a half. I pushed extremely hard with that, raised $12 million in Series A funding last year. We're now 35 people. We're deployed all over the place. We're focused on sea level rise and coastal issues primarily, but working with a lot of larger and small communities across the country. Of course, then there's what really happens. So all of the investors who are paying attention, we can put earmuffs, because for you, it's rainbows and unicorns. For the rest of us, I had a co-founder and she's a wonderful person and she kept quitting. But then she'd come back and then she'd quit and then she'd come back, she'd come back. I couldn't raise any money because I didn't actually have a product. And investors spent a lot of time commenting on my clothes and my hair, captivated by my eyes, and weren't really interested about the product because we're talking about plumbing and who really cares. So in 2017, I spent 8 months with my team working on a sensor that completely didn't work. I still couldn't raise any money. No one wanted to buy my non-existent product, but we did pivot from a environmental, industrial construction compliance product to a city-focused product that allowed us to deploy networks across cities and understand how water moves through these systems. My co-founder quit again. In 2018, we got our very first customer, Jersey City. At that point, no one knew that I had not actually seen the inside of a sewer when my job was to sell and design sensors for the inside of sewers. With that pilot, our sensors all failed within 3 days. But those are unimportant details because we had the pilot, which was enough for us to raise that first round and bump from 750 to 1.2 million. We did go through Techstars that year, and I did ultimately fire my co-founder, although it was an incredibly difficult decision. In 2019, we started selling like crazy. I was either on an airplane or in a sewer someplace in the country almost every day. I learned how hard it is to actually install sensors in sewers, and then once they're installed, to actually measure the stuff that you want them to measure. And I'm severely claustrophobic. So being 40 feet underground in a dark pipe of sewage was difficult. Also in 2019, one of our board members decided they wanted to do a kind of a takeover, which was a weird time to do it. We weren't worth a lot of money at that point. So we ended up I had to furlough my team again. They drove our valuation way down. We had an investor step up, invest money so I could bring my team back and cover payroll. And then ultimately we moved him out and then brought someone else in. Regardless, still focused on sales. We were moving along. I bridged
at the end of 2019 to raise our Series A. One thing investors told me a lot, angel investors in particular, was that you shouldn't bridge because if you bridge, you failed. I've bridged like 10 times. And the reason that you're doing that is we're doing really difficult things. So you have to hit milestones. And if you don't hit those milestones and you have a point where you get to that and you just need some money to cover you to there, take the money because that's how you get to the next step. Anyway, so like I said, COVID happened. I had to furlough my team. I did raise $2 million and I closed that round in April of 2020. I was very sick. So I was working probably 20 hours a day for a month and a half straight. I was very sick, but storm sensor lives again. And I raised another bridge at the end of 2020 to 2020, or I'm sorry, 2020, yes. 2020 to 2021. The investor that led that bridge had very, very, very strict terms. And I had to take those terms because if I didn't, we wouldn't have a company. We had about another $1 million coming in under them, closed the round. A day later, my attorney called and asked why they hadn't invested yet. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, there's no money. And they had no money. They're gonna get it. They swear they're gonna get it. So we ended up, I didn't have to furlough my team. One of the investors allowed us to use his funding to cover payroll while we figured out what to do, which was either give back all the other money or a new investor came in, took over the lead on that, and then ended up leading our Series A, which got us a total of $12 million last year. And like I said, I've got 35 extraordinary, brilliant people working with me. And all of that, that's not the hard stuff that I'm going to cover. That's just the hard stuff that happened to us. Had I known that going into this whole thing, I tell myself that I wouldn't have done it, but that's a lie. I'd still do it. It's still extraordinary. The thing about entrepreneurs is that we are driven, we're bullheaded, we don't listen to advice necessarily, we think we can accomplish everything, and then we go for it. And what's awesome is that a lot of times we actually do get that done, probably because of that blindness that we have about ourselves. So these are in no particular order. So I might switch back and forth. So they say that raising money is hard. That is an understatement. It is incredibly, incredibly difficult. When you're building hardware, building a working prototype is incredibly hard to do because there's so many moving parts that go into it. That is nothing compared to building something for manufacture and building that for scale. And then once you do that and everything's tested and it's working and then you get everything deployed in the field, they can all fail after everything's been tested and running in the lab and running in it's just amazing the things that can go wrong. So practically speaking, build a first article inspection every time you change anything about any of your runs, and then do that alongside with your manufacturer so they understand what goes into it. You know that you have all the parts that you need, and you know, or are on a much better path toward making sure it works in the future. Hardware can pass all of those tests, like I said, fail in the field. I have learned that every time I bring in a new software engineer, and this is for small teams, like four people teams. Every time I bring in a new one and the prior one leaves, the new one says that the other one was an idiot. Everything has to be built again from scratch. So we're on our 4th rebuild. When you're selling to government, the way that the procurement rules work are not designed for companies that have not existed for 20, 30, or 50 years. So you typically can't get through procurement if you follow this typical process. But if you have a champion, they can work with you through that. If you work with companies like Xylem, they can direct that for you. And there are workarounds. And most cities, if they're excited and you find that champion, they'll work with you to find that workaround to get you deployed out there in their community. Finding investors, raising money is hard. Investors especially don't like hardware because it's expensive, it breaks, it takes a long time to fix, it's expensive, and it breaks. If you can overcome that objection and you can manage to do some kind of ARR, recurring revenue, you're much more likely to get investment funding at a kind of a startup-like level. A shocking number of investors are going to be interested in what you present, especially angels. A lot of that is because they're getting deal flow through their groups. They like a show. But when you find investors who are excited, doing those, I call them shows, putting on the show, that does work. It gets you the introductions that you need. But when you have people ask you and they love what you do and they want to know when you get to 1 million or 10 million monthly active users, just walk away, say thank you and walk away. Meeting investor expectations during a raise is difficult when you have no history to back up your forecasts. And the second thing of that is meeting investor expectations after a raise is difficult because you had no history to back up your forecasts. So you're going to be wrong and they're going to be frustrated. So you have to be able to understand what's going on, communicate with your board, communicate with your investors, and have a plan. As long as you have a plan and you're open and you're honest and you're communicating, it's going to be okay. When key people leave early on, you're losing that institutional knowledge. And a lot of times when you're a startup, you're not documenting anything and everything, so that's gone. Also, a lot of times you'll find that people leave because it gets really hard and maybe something's wrong and you don't know what's wrong until they're gone and you can't fix it. So that's always been an interesting experience. With that, things go wrong. It's amazing how wrong things go. I feel like I'm saying everything is wrong and it's hard. That is the point of this, but that's okay. Because if you start this recognizing that you need time and it's not going to happen in a year or 2 years or even 5 years, and you need money. I mean, we're in an industry that it's exciting to raise $5 million when we're talking about rideshare apps and food delivery apps that raise $30 million for an app. And we're talking about things like building water systems to provide clean water for people across the world. Like, it's a scale difference and the expectations are very different too. So know that going in, and that's okay. Because if you love it, it is 100% absolutely worth it. You literally get to change the world for the better. You get to work with incredibly talented people. Your customers are so excited because they've wanted to do something like this for so long and they've been looking for so long, and you've done it and they want it, and you find those people, they will get it and get it installed for you. You wake up every morning so excited because you actually get to do this thing that you created. Sometimes you don't wake up feeling like that, but give it a couple days. And even with the hard times, if you keep moving forward, you will get there. And I cannot tell you how many times that I have had no idea how I was going to get past another furlough or any of these issues. It's like walking into a black, dark abyss of hopelessness. And I just kept pushing and I kept pushing, and we made it. There's always hope. There's always something that came up as long as you keep trying. And I can't tell you that Storm Sensor will be 100% successful by the end of this year, but we got to here. We're way farther ahead than we've ever been before. And we made a difference in thousands of people's lives. We have a company that people are excited to work with, and we have a mission and vision that really speaks to people. And most importantly, we're not alone. You're not alone. Do not act or feel like you are alone. There are so many people out there who are absolutely terrified to do what you're doing. But those same people are so excited to help you and watch you do that. So you want to lean on them. You want to rely on your investors and your board and your partner, because those are the people who are going to carry you through. It's that network that carries you through and pushes you to all of this. And what's so exciting is that I came up with this idea ages ago. I'm not an engineer. I've never built hardware or software before I had Storm Sensor. And now we have a company. We're working all over the country. We're working with cities and talking to companies in other parts of the world to deploy there as well. And it's so cool because it's not just me anymore. It's an entire community of people trying to do great things. On a practical note, and a personal note, take care of yourself when you do this. Exercise, eat right, sleep if you can. Because if you're not healthy, your company's not going to be healthy, and your team's not going to be healthy, and nobody wants to do that. But otherwise, good luck.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for setting up the context and for sharing your words. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I would like to introduce now the judges for tonight. Judges, could you please turn on your cameras? Please. Okay. All right, so let's go. The first we have Arun Sattar, Sustainable Water Management Program Lead and Water Diplomacy Track Leader at Tufts. Thank you, Arun. We also have other judges, Geeta Rao, Senior Lecturer, Program Director, Master of Finance at MIT Sloan. We have Orin Hoffman, Partner and Head of Government Partnership at the Engine. Yanshe Johnson, Founding Partner of Orange Spot LLC. Anders Hasby, Partner of Master Inventor. And Mark England, VP of Innovation and Technology at Xylem Incorporated. Thank you to all the judges for the help with this year's. Judges, please turn off your cameras now. Thank you. Right on time, but it's now time to turn off the cameras off. So back to the point, and turn it back on at the end of each QA session. When you have a question to ask during the QA session, please use the raise hand feature on the Zoom button and unmute to ask your question. At the end of the QA, please turn off your video, the mic off, submit your review for our final preparations, and prepare to the next team. Miles, back to you now.
Thank you. Thank you again, Daniel, and a warm welcome to our judges. I'm Miles. I'm an MBA and LGO student here. I'm also a VP of the Water Innovation Prize, working with our startups that we have today. So today we're going to hear 6 pitches from our startup teams. And to give you a sense of what they've been through, we started with over 50 applications months ago. We selected 20 semi-finalists for the Water Innovation Prize, and they spent a month working with selected mentors week over week. They were paired with them to refine their pitches and their business decks. From that, we came out with a field of 6 finalists. They went through another month-long round of mentorships to bring us here today. So these teams have all worked incredibly hard and have very polished pitches for us. We're very excited that we can host people over Zoom. It also creates some technical fun. So we're going to switch between the teams over Zoom, and they'll be able to share and present their slides remotely. So we ask for patience. We'll hear from 3 teams initially, then have a short break, and then hear from the remaining 3. And the first team that we'll hear from is Living Waters. So for that, I'm going to give Joshua control. Did I drop the Zoom meeting? Josh, whenever you're ready, each team has 15 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here. My name is Gabriela Saade, a Social Impact Fellow at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, and I'm the COO of Living Water Systems. Today, we're going to show you what a new era of sustainable water provision in vulnerable populations looks like. About 3 years ago, I started a project within the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers community that aimed to channel humanitarian aid toward Venezuelan refugees. We visited displaced families in the valley of Cucuta who mostly live in hastily constructed shacks. All they had to drink were containers with water likely fetched at the start of the month from a stream or a leaking pipeline. Even as the seasonal downpours cascaded down the roofs, their water drums remained just as empty as it had not rained at all. Just like in Venezuela, they were in a tropical country where rainwater is abundant, and they still couldn't fulfill this most basic need. Much like the residents of Cucuta, an estimated 1.1 billion people who live in such off-grid conditions lack access to basic water and sanitation. Many live in rural areas where clean water is found hours away from where a family lives. Others reside in peri-urban or urban settlements where water infrastructure just doesn't reach. And worse yet, there are those, the most vulnerable of all, those who have been displaced from their homes and live in refugee settlements, where water networks are the most efficient and inconsistent. NGOs and international organizations have tried to fill the gap by providing relief to people living in water scarcity, spending billions of dollars to provide safe water. But there's still a lack of an inexpensive, sustainable solution. That's where we come in.
At Living Water Systems, we provide the world's first portable rainwater collection systems for off-grid use. In short, we capture and preserve clean, potable rainwater for off-grid settlement dwellers right at their doorsteps. To do this, we harvest rainfall. Rainwater is naturally the purest form of existing water, but we provide a basic screening process whereby first a 20 micron mesh guard blocks out all the larger detritus that amasses in a given downpour. Well, once the water passes into our collapsible storage barrel and basic shock chlorination is applied, it's then passed through a 5 micron point of view sediment filter, after which time it's potable and safe for drinking, bathing, other day-to-day domestic purposes. Perhaps the single greatest attraction of our units are their elegant simplicity. Anyone can take advantage of their easy-to-use do-it-yourself setup without any pre-existing know-how. They're highly versatile and can be used on most of the pitched housing in common use in off-grid settlements and refugee camps, especially designed for the less durable relief tents that you see featured here and strewn prominently over the larger refugee infrastructure. And what's more, the entire unit fits inside a standard student backpack, a lightweight portable design essential for areas that are highly prone to displacement and frequently beset by natural disasters. After unboxing it, simply toss it over and tie it in place in no more than 15 minutes.
So, if rainwater harvesting is such a viable way of hydrating entire populations, why hasn't it been implemented at scale yet? Turns out existing roof-mounted rainwater collection systems cost anywhere from a few hundred to several thousands of dollars, require expert installation that isn't always available on location, and most importantly, have to be directly mounted to the walls, so they can't be used in soft structures like tents. Living Water Systems work on any pitched housing structure in the global refugee and off-grid market, including critical humanitarian markets in Latin America, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. In these places, Living Waters can provide over half a family's UN-recommended daily water needs. A $60 price point enables us to provide massive cost savings to NGOs and disaster relief agencies, helping them to achieve the basic clean water standard for refugee settlements, which is a goal that currently 2/3 of all settlements are unable to meet. In most camps, water is generated one of two ways. It's either trucked in at a long distance or provided by on-site boreholes. Both methods are prohibitively expensive, and NGOs will usually spend around $4.2 million for an average 5 camp over its first 5 years of operation. With Living Waters, though, an NGO can reduce costs by 42%, saving millions in the first 2 years of its implementation alone. In our initial development, we were able to pilot our first phase prototypes and interview residents in 7 different villages, which provided valuable insight into their situation and set the stage for our work in rural and peri-urban slums.
Since then, we were privileged to be recently voted as Best Company at both the University of Chicago Social Venture Challenge and Eric Schmidt Inaugural Foundation Program for Impact Ventures. Over these last months, we've been developing our finalized living water system with the UNHRD Research Lab in Brindisi, Italy, in preparation for a paid pilot in partnership with the World Food Program slated for this fall. Additionally, we've been coordinating and undertaking consumer surveys with local organizations like Techo and community leaders in Barranquilla and Cúcuta on a concurrent pilot deployment, where we expect to deliver several hundred additional units with the implementation assistance of these charities. In this next phase, we are seeking $195,000 to partly cover the cost of dual pilots, as well as a one-year ramp-up period. Support from MIT Water will be apportioned toward building the core team underground, including a local sales lead and implementation team. The capital we raise will also be used towards inventory with our producer in Zhejiang for our first deployments. With your help, we will be able to smoothly fund this transition period. And we believe we are the right team for this. I am a Master of Public Policy and Social Venture Fellow at the University of Chicago, as well as a Social Impact Officer at the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers of Caracas, Venezuela, my hometown. We also have Joseph and Joshua, who are seasoned startup founder and mechanical engineering minds, who have co-designed and hand-built all the products you saw on our pitch today. To top that off, we possess a range of vocational and subject matter experience throughout our advisory network at U Chicago and Carnegie Mellon, with expertise in sanitation, soft goods manufacturing, and nonprofit marketing. So come, let us begin to realize a new era of water security in Latin America and across the globe. We invite you to join us in this mission to transform the lives of millions by democratizing access to rainwater harvesting. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, the Living Water Systems team. So you now have about 7.5 minutes for questions. So judges, if you'd like to unmute yourselves and turn your cameras on, feel free to chat with the team.
So one initial question. Who will you be selling to? Who would be the customer in this part? I understand who the user is, but who would be actually you be selling to? And what kind of relationships do you have with those potential buyers?
Thank you very much for your question. It's an excellent question. We wanted to start by selling our products to organizations, NGOs and multilateral organizations. We have a partnership already with the United Nations. They're interested in our product and testing it, for example, in refugee camps. So given the network that they already have in different locations, that would be a first step. But we're not only thinking about the UN, we're also thinking about local organizations. For example, in Colombia, we have Techo. They showed interest in our product. They already work in communities, specifically building housing in these communities that typically don't have access to water. So adding a system like Living Waters would be ideal for them. We're not close to potentially in the future thinking about going directly to the consumer, but for us, it's actually way easier to rely on these organizations because it's very hard to get into these communities as outsiders and just start selling these products. They also have the capital to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I see a question from Geeta Rao.
Yes, very interesting presentation, Gabriela. I had a question for you, though. Given the population that you want to serve, very vulnerable, sort of forced migration type of populations, right? Would you be better off looking for a blended finance type of model which is one where rather than looking for funding directly in the VC system, you're actually going to a large multilateral and trying to get funded by them, and then that buys you enough time to build the whole thing out, to build this business model out.
Yeah, well, actually, in a way, we're doing that with the UN and the World Food Program. The thing is that for an organization like the United Nations, they oversee so many refugee camps. They have all these responsibilities. They want to see a pilot. They want to see the results. They want to see what the consumers, what the end users are saying. So in this phase, that is exactly what we're focusing on. So we want to demonstrate that this is a unit that you can use in different contexts with different populations. But we also want to learn a little bit more about the user, which is basically one of the main objectives of the pilot that we're going to run. But yeah, that's definitely a very good point. And that is why we built this partnership with the UN through the World Food Program. But again, we're not only focusing on like these large refugee camps, we're also targeting these other rural settlements. So that's why we also want to test it in those kind of settlements. And there, the customer would be those organizations, like those NGOs working there that are smaller.
Great, thank you for the question. I see another one from Aram Sitar.
I actually think that maybe other people were before me. So if you want to go in sequence, I'm not sure.
I think I can't really tell from my vantage point.
Have at it, Aram.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what I actually wanted to ask quickly, it'll be a little bit of a follow-up, and thank you, obviously, that you're trying to solve a really important problem. What I didn't hear yet is there anything that is customizable in your solution, right? So a lot of refugee communities, as we know, are basically, they take up long-term residence where they're displaced. And there's a lot of adaptation that they have to do. They have to figure out local food, employment opportunities. Not everything is just brought in and given. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit more from you about what that look like, because is this totally customizable? It comes out of a backpack and then it just gets deployed. And do local communities actually, can they change things depending on their local conditions, which may be very different? So just a little bit of the role for, the end potential beneficiary.
Absolutely, it's a really important question. In terms of specifically the technical aspects of the product, the unit is actually customizable to be tethered to the collapsible barrel to be tethered to rainwater bladders, which are customary in refugee settlements in Kenya and the Middle East and certain areas in Bangladesh. And so on a technical level, we can, the storage element is highly customizable. In terms of usage, we have specifically a model designed for standardized relief tent housing and also another model that we're currently in the works for the larger MSU tents that the World Food Program currently uses. So yeah, there is quite a good deal of customization that can be done on the user's end as well as the nonprofit.
Sorry to interrupt here. You have about 45 seconds remaining of questions.
Okay, excellent. I see a question from, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, John J. Johnson.
Yes, I have a question regarding the supply of the kits. So how do we ensure a secure and a steady supply? Because the last 2 years has been very challenging in the world because of Corona, but also lockdowns. And especially if an event is happening, you need to supply on a short notice a large amount. So how do you plan to envision everything?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really critical issue, especially in humanitarian contexts. So our current liaison with the UNHRD Humanitarian Response Depot alleviates this pain point pretty considerably. They're responsible for the 7 main depots that stock up the humanitarian aid supplies like the tents, the tarps, and the medical supplies. So we intend to leverage that partnership in the near term and to expedite mass deployment of our product.
Great. Thank you, team. If you could, we'll wrap up your 15 minutes now. So thank you again to the Living Waters team.
Thank you so much.
We'll smoothly jump through their appendix. Great. Our next team is Flowless that will be sharing with us. And for that, I will give Baker control of the slides. Flowless, if you're all set, we'll start your 15 minutes.
Yep, we're all set. Let me just test this. So it looks like it takes some time to switch from one slide to another, but no problem. We'll make it happen. Okay, great. So what's happening in this picture right here? You might not be familiar with this unless you have worked with the utility, because this is how a typical day in the utility life looks like. Lots of problems, leaks, inefficient operations, and all of this causes lots of huge losses and inefficiency in water supply, unreliable water supply for our communities. And this is why we introduce Flowless. In Flowless, we help utilities and farmers to enhance water efficiency and provide more and reduce water losses and automatically detect our leaks and control the water systems. So what we do is we help them in automatically controlling their systems, like water pumping, and we also help them by automatically detecting leaks in the water supply network. And we work on operation monitoring. So the utility or the farmer can use our system for operations and monitoring. So how it works, the first thing that we do is we install our smart devices in the field to collect real-time data on water flow, water pressure, and other parameters. So here in this box, you can see our data transmitters, which can be connected to theoretically any kind of sensor, like pressure sensor and water meter, and so on and so forth. So the collected data is then sent to our database, our cloud-based database, and then this is our software, which analyzes the data and provides interpretations on the status of the water network in terms of graphs, map views, automated alerts. It also provides automatic leak detection using AI, artificial intelligence aided analysis to detect the leaks and optimize the operations in the water network and the irrigation system. So we know that this works because up until now, we have installed our system in more than 18 locations in Palestine and in Jordan, that is in the Middle East. We also expanded our operations in Ireland and Africa. We have ongoing projects there right now in Ireland and in South Africa, generating more than $60,000 in revenues, and we have much more in the pipeline right now. And we are an impact-driven startup at the core. So we help by contributing to providing more reliable water supply to communities and saving huge amounts of water that would otherwise be lost through leaks and inefficient water use. Our business model is quite flexible. We have a twofold business model. The first component is one-off payment for the hardware and the initial costs. And then we charge annual fees for our web platform and maintenance costs. Right now, we are rolling out a new business model based on benefit sharing. So what this basically means is we install the system at a deducted price, like 30 or 40% of the cost. And then we cover the rest by sharing the savings that we contribute to with the utility or the farmer. So it's zero risk for the farmer. It's risky for us, but it's also very rewarding if it works. And it does, trust me on that. So we work with water utilities, helping them in consumption tracking, leak detection, automated reports, control for their pumps, their valves. So it's basically a comprehensive system for them to monitor and control their systems. And then we also work with farmers, providing them with a system for control for smart irrigation system, precision irrigation, in addition to control for their ventilation and pretty much everything they need to control in their farm. So you might be wondering, there are lots of companies providing similar solutions. So why do we stand out? Well, this is because our system is comprehensive and flexible, and it is affordable and adaptable to the contexts that we work in. In many cases, developing countries have underdeveloped infrastructure, which prevents the utilities and the farmers from adopting systems from these big companies, which provide off-the-shelf solution. And this is pretty much why we don't see them in the Middle East, like in Palestine and in Jordan. We don't see these systems very much spread here. So our system is flexible. The components, the hardware, the software that we provide are both flexible because we built them out from scratch. So we basically can do anything with them. And then our business model is flexible. So you can see that we can provide it, the whole system, or we can provide the solution, the web platform, through a SaaS model. So our solution is scalable to large systems, and it also fits the small utilities and small farmer systems. It's comprehensive and can cover most of the needs of utilities and farmers. Also, it is interoperable, and it can be integrated with other systems like traditional SCADA systems, for example. So here is the great team behind all of this. I am the CEO, so I am in charge of making all the travels and setting all the deadlines. And you can see those great guys are very much dedicated because they have been working with me for like 3 years right now. We have great developers like Osama Sobki and their team working on the hardware. They took the hardware from like this and here. So it's a great work they have done. We also have full stack developers, DevOps, Iyad, Mazen, and Bishop, all working, and we share the same vision. And this is really essential for us. And we are working to take Flawless one step further to international and full scalability internationally. So we believe that we have lots of potential. This is why we have an expansion strategy, and we have set certain criteria to screen the potential markets. So these are a few of them, and the strategy for working there is providing the system through a SaaS model, and we would be having business partners to help in operations, in addition to development partners to help in using a blended finance model that is supporting the utilities that cannot afford, or the farmers that cannot afford the cost. So we believe that we have so many potential, and we can unlock more potential by using our new business model based on benefit sharing and by going international. For this, we are right now raising $200,000 in grants and loans to be used for market expansion and service offerings. And then in 2023, we would be closing our first equity round to be used for more international expansion and product development and accelerated sales. Sounds optimistic? Well, it is optimistic because this is where we were 2 years ago. This is our very first prototype. You can see how very basic it is. And this is where we are right now. And we are heading to be and envisioning to be the lead in sustainable water technology in the MENA region and beyond. Thank you so much. Okay, so
Over. Yep. Oh, we have about 6.5 minutes for questions.
Great. So when you're running a software, but it's also a hardware as a service, can you talk to, your ideal installation, kind of how you view not just the upfront kind of CapEx costs of the hardware, but also the maintenance and sort of full life cycle, and how that compares with the revenue you'll be generating for the data as a service?
Right. So, so the ideal case and the case we have been using right now locally in Palestine and in Jordan is we provide the hardware, install it, and then we provide the customized software for the client. We follow up with them through maintenance contracts and continuous follow-up. This works for farmers and utilities as well. Now we realize that this is not very much scalable unless we have the right business partners. So this is what we have been working on right now. So we have business partners in South Africa, in Ireland, and in Switzerland as well. So we believe that the software can be much more scalable through our SaaS model, and it can be integrated with other hardware systems. For the revenue generation, it's very different because some markets you can generate more revenues by selling hardware, like the case in the Middle East, but in other regions you can use the recurring revenues that you get from selling the software as a service, which can also generate a lot of money. Now we are working on our hardware also to be more scalable by providing the code, our code or our embedded software to be integrated with other hardware as well. And this is one way of making it more scalable.
Hey, Baker. So really nice job. I really admire your enthusiasm and your appetite for taking on more. I think one question I've got for you though is I see that you have quite a few different target customers and different types of offerings. And I wonder whether you're, the size of company you're trying to spread yourself a bit too thin. And so with that in mind, what if you were to just focus on one or two core parts of your business to grow, which would those bits be? What's the sort of the real crux, the real heart of the business you want to try and grow in the short term?
Yeah, so it sounds like we are working with so many customer segments, but then we started working with utilities three years ago. And we see that we can take it to the next level going international. So this is why we are working on more development in our software and hardware and working with business partners internationally. We started working with farmers 1 year ago, and we also see much potential, especially in the MENA region, because it's an emerging market. There is a great need, and there are competitors, of course, but then we claim that we have a competitive advantage over other systems, as I mentioned. So it's really us working on a more generic IoT system, including the hardware and software, and we're taking that one step at a time. So we start working with utilities, providing them with a leak detection service in addition to consumption tracking. This comes as one package, and then combining all of this provide us with more speciality. So it's specialized for the utilities. We provide hydraulic analysis and data analytics, not only data visualization and data collection. And then we are taking it steps more. So the next step would be water treatment. And then we might be also looking for industries. So it's really, it might sound that we are doing so many things at one time, but then we are doing it one step at a time, which makes it more easier for us, and at the same time unlocks more potential. So right now we are 13 team members, and we are growing more and more to fill the demand and keep up with development. Thank you.
2 minutes remaining, Baker.
Right. I'm actually struggling a bit understanding differentiation here, because there are lots of people doing this, and you mentioned some of the big guys, of course, doing it, but there are a lot of small companies doing it as well. doing it on a shoestring a little bit, just like you are doing it. So what do you think is your kind of magic sauce here that is going to make you successful? Is it that you know the market better than anyone else? Is it you understand the business model better? What is it that truly makes you unique with the solution that you're providing?
So it's really a mixture of the business model and the technology that we provide, because we see and we have found out that the technology itself, without a proper business model, it doesn't work. So you cannot sell it to, especially in developing countries, but also in developed countries because of the large competition. So the flexibility we have in the business model, we have this standard business model, which is basically what everybody else is doing. But we also have the leak detection as a service. We have the performance-based contracts, and all of these can be curated and customized for our customers. Also, we can, in many cases, provide support services that the other big players cannot provide for the local context in the developing world, because in many cases the infrastructure is not developed enough for these off-the-shelf solutions. So basically, the utility cannot just buy the system and have somebody install it for them, because they don't have the basic technical capacity and technical know-how. So we're working on that as well. And this is why we have managed to work with so many utilities in Palestine and in Jordan. But it also can be more scalable because we don't have to provide these services all the time. So in Ireland, for example, we didn't go there. We didn't install our hardware. It's all set. So we just integrated it with them, with their system. And we are providing more value through our web platform. And then we have, of course, the characteristics of the system, the hardware being very much customizable, especially for the context in the MENA region and developing countries. The software being interoperable and modular. So it's a set of services you can ask and pick and choose between these services as a utility and the farmer. This, I would say, are the main differentiators.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Baker. That takes us to time for Flowless. So thank you for sharing your pitch with us.
Thank you so much. And sorry, we didn't have time for your question.
I will submit my comment.
So I've just brought us to our next speaker, Hydrologistics, and I will give control to Victor to share. Great. Victor, once you're all set, we'll start the timer.
I'm set.
Excellent. Have you accepted the screen control?
Not yet. Please, could you? I'm not able to control the screen.
Give this a try, otherwise I can advance it for you. Great.
Yeah, so I'm good to go. Yeah, my name is Victor Shikoli. I've got a background in electrical engineering, and currently serve as the co-founder and CEO at HydroIQ. At HydroIQ, we are a virtual water network operator that gives consumers and water utilities a single and transparent platform to manage water consumption and water management. We are simply a gateway to modern water access, utility and distribution of water for emerging markets. We're using IoT, data analytics, and blockchain technology to bring transparency in water access, utility payments, and consumer experience in a single platform. HydroIQ is the world's first virtual water network operator, providing water intelligence platform for homes, utilities, and industries to count every drop of water, pay and get paid in a simple and transparent and efficient way. So why water in Africa and emerging markets? Because of the poor infrastructure, there's massive water losses, massive revenue losses. And the result for this, water utilities across Africa currently lose up to 50% of water that they supply. And this is as a result of leakages and theft and tampering within the distribution lines. In addition, over 45% of revenue is lost as a result of unmetered consumption and unbilled consumption and meter inaccuracies. The results for this is over $3 billion lost in revenue for water utilities annually across Africa. So why now? Massive water demand, high cost of water, huge investments in water infrastructure. The African population is expected to double by the year 2050, with 2/3 of the population expected to be living in urban areas. In Africa, where I live, we spend around 11% of households' income on water. If compared to developed markets such as the US, where they spent about 3%. So over 20 to 64 billion of water investments is spent on an annualized basis. And so because there's rapid urban population, loss of water, high non-revenue water, and there's a rising cost of water, this contributes to unreliable water for critical use in homes, businesses, and industries. So the water distribution is a liberalized commodity, and it's still fragmented. So which means that there's multiple bulk metered sources, leaving all households billing to the real estates and brokers. So how the water business is structured is that we've got municipal water utilities, and this water comes essentially from dams. We've got borehole water, and this essentially comes from wells. And last, we've got the water tankers, and this comes from rivers. And for all this water to be delivered to the reservoir, it has to be metered. Utilities and all these kinds of suppliers lose a lot of water before this water gets to a reservoir. To the reservoir is where now treatment is done. So this is now water that is safe for drinking and all kinds of purposes. And now that's where HydroIQ comes into play. And so we make sure that we increase efficiency and transparency for this water to be delivered to industries, homes, and factories. So HydroIQ solution, we are a 3-service solution provider in that we plumb into the entire water distribution space to provide water analytics, metering, billing, and payments in a single platform. So first and foremost, we provide remote water monitoring and control, turning the traditional water systems into smart water grids without having to change the existing infrastructure. Secondly, we've built a secure online access platform, which is a 24/7 permission blockchain network with visibility for both the end user and utility managers to be able to get real-time consumption data analytics on leaks and alerts with a better customer service experience. Lastly, we've built a mobile-first mobile application, which is secure, built on top of blockchain technology to provide secure mobile payments, distributed bills, consumption management with open banking APIs, which means that we are able to integrate our ERP system into any kind of payment system in the global market. One of our competitive edge over our competitors, and we've narrowed that down in terms of features and benefits. So the aspect of real-time incorruptible data, leak detection, mobile payment processing, data and analytics tools, open APIs, and third-party integrations. Our benefits includes billing revenues and collections increasing to 98% from 60%. We've decreased customer service costs by up to 85%. Increased customer service retention with 55% decrease in operational costs on meter reading and manual payments collection. So we increased transparency and efficiency in billing, and we allow our customers to choose from any kind of water service providers. Our platform has continuously scaled to meet increasing demand, and what that means is, in terms of impact, over 100 million liters of water has been able to be supplied over the HydroIQ platform, with about 8,000 clients, happy households. So we enable this better usage management, and we ensure that what you use is what you pay. And we've been able to actually integrate the mobile money payments with smart notification to improve better information and reduce water consumption on an alarms and alerts to the consumer and property managers and utilities. So we've got about 30 plus clients spread between Kenya and Central America. And we work with top tier clients, which include real estates and communal water projects. Our enterprise clients include multinational companies such as the AB InBev, Hydro Group in Italy, which is a multinational communal water provider, and Cementos Progreso, which is a cement manufacturer in Central America, diversifying to build a smart city. So we are the core solutions provider in the Central American market. So we continue to establish partnerships, and one of the reasons we're doing this is to actually reduce our entry costs, because the meter is still a very costly item, especially for the water utilities. And for the smart meters, we are creating the first buy now, pay later option for utilities who have cash flow challenges. And by this, we are working with financial institutions, so banks, and we're also exploring partnerships with global meter manufacturers, which include Camstrap, Baylor Meters, and DL Meters, and Elstar in South Africa, and Shaw Meters and Lyson in China. So we've tested our business model, and we currently have 3 plans, or rather 3 packages. And this includes the HydroIQ Basic, HydroIQ Professional, and HydroIQ Enterprise. For the HydroIQ Basic, one of the interesting things that we've actually done is that we've been able to automate the current metering systems in the market to be smart. We've been able to digitize the current meters in the market. And this is to reduce zero error meter readings for the current metering systems in the market. So the HydroIQ Basic, it's a software as a service platform for property managers to manage water usage and invoice for the residents. We charge a $50 monthly per account, and we work with small property managers, community water projects, small water service providers. We also have the HydroIQ Professional, which has integrated payment infrastructure for monitoring, billing, payments platform. And there's an initial cost of $6 per meter with 8% to 10% monthly usage. And we work with the large to mid-size property owners and businesses, large water service providers. And last but not least, we've got the HydroIQ Enterprise, where we've been able to go fully digital by customizing an advanced analytics for water service providers. It has an initial smart meter cost, which is negotiable, especially depending on who is financing. And that's why we're working with banks or rather financial institutions on buy now, pay later option. And we charge a 3% to 5% monthly usage. And we work with large to mid-size water utilities, industries, government agencies. So in terms of our financial plan, so we make money through subscription, fee, and commission. Our plan over the next 5 years is actually to sign up 50,000 accounts with an 18 million yearly revenue. While saving at least $500 million in potential losses, operational costs, and recovered non-payments. So we are constantly working to grow our financials. And in the next 36 months, we aim to sign up 180K users with $4.3 million in annual recurring revenues in the next 36 months, with a 107% average year-on-year growth on company gross revenues. So we have a scalable channels to acquire new users, with 70% being from inbound sales, with customer recommendations, which is B2B, and social sharing and inbound marketing. 30% is post-demo conversion, which is about 36,000 in annual recurring revenues added per month. And our marketing, we have the content and marketing playbook with referrals and distribution partners. So we are constantly iterating on repeatable strategies to convert new customers and double down to new users. Our deployment roadmap, we use Africa's largest mobile money service to launch in different markets. So we're using M-Pesa. So M-Pesa is the biggest mobile payments company in Africa, boasting of about 50 million users. So they've scaled to about 11 countries. And because our system has really worked well with M-Pesa, we aim to actually fully integrate the HydroIQ user experience and allow us to launch in other 7 countries where M-Pesa operates in the next 5 years. We are raising capital, so we are seeking to raise about $1.5 million to accelerate growth and improve the product. Initially, we've raised about 225 pre-seed from Techstars, which is the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. Partech Ventures, African Academy of Sciences, which was an unrecoverable grant. In the year 2022, our plan to raise $1.5 million will be to actually expand our team. That is 45% of the fundraise to go into expanding the team, marketing, sales, and operations taking 40%, and 15% going into R&D. So we hope to ramp up our sales and to improve our product roadmap and sign up new users. So HydroIQ has moved from proof of concept to commercial launch in just 2 years. In 2019, where we did a proof of concept, completed product development, successfully piloted with 1 property with 50 residents. We onboarded 1 customer with a pipeline of 500 residents. In the year 2020 to 2021, that's when we did our go-to-market with first paying users, onboarded 2 multinational enterprise customers, and reached 5K plus residents. In the year 2022 to 2024, we're looking up to scale to ramp up our user acquisition, doing 1 million plus users with $12 million in annual recurring revenues, targeting enterprise clients, hire excellent team to expand to new African markets and explore other emerging markets on a global basis. And we actually want to invest more into research and development to improve our product.
Great. Victor, thank you so much. I actually have to stop you there for time to keep all teams on the same time scale. But if the judges want to share any questions into the chat, we can pass them to Victor after our session today for the purpose of time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Yeah, so I welcome questions, and I'm actually glad to speak to you all. Thank you.
So that brought us through our first 3 teams of the evening. So we're going to take a quick 5 minutes so that Kristen from the MIT Water Club can share a little bit about that before we dive right back into our presentations.
Thank you for the introduction. So as Miles said, my name is Kristen and I am this year's president of MIT Water Club. I just wanted to take a minute or two to talk about who we are and what we do. So in general, MIT Water Club is a group of students on MIT's campus who are passionate about water issues, and we work together with stakeholders across a variety of disciplines from academia, industry, finance, art, or anyone who's interested in working together to solve today's pressing water challenges. So sort of to further those goals, we host a couple of events each year. One of them is obviously this Water Innovation Prize, which culminates in these wonderful pitches we've been hearing. We also host an event in the fall called the MIT Water Summit, where each year we pick a theme and we bring a diverse group of speakers together to share their expertise about that theme and talk about sort of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going with regards to the challenges in their field. In 2021, last fall, our theme was coastal cities and ecosystems, which sparked a lot of really interesting conversations given sort of our coastal location. And in the past, we've also talked about plastic pollution, the water food nexus, and building resilient systems, among other things. Our third event is MIT Water Night, which is our research expo and community engagement night, where we invite students to come and share research posters, art projects, educational demos to anyone in the community who's interested in coming to learn more about what's going on in the world of water. We also had a new event this year, the MIT Water Hackathon, where it's a 24-hour event where teams of students come together to sort of work together on a particular theme. This year's theme was urban flooding, and they sort of work together for those 24 hours to put together a solution to the problem that they were pitched, and then they sort of present that and compete for prizes. We're really excited with the ideas we saw at our first event back in February, so we're really excited to repeat this event and expand it in the future. Beyond that, we also host a couple of events sort of periodically. We have a lecture series, we have a weekly newsletter, we work together with other campus sustainability groups on various projects, and sort of a variety of other things. So if you are interested in learning more or getting involved, you can feel free to find me after the event or check us out at mitwater.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, for the support from the MIT Water Club. So one of the criteria to participate in the MIT Water Innovation Prize is that someone on your team has to be a full-time student. And so the next team, their full-time student is affiliated with MIT, which affords us the opportunity for an in-person pitch. So we'll now invite Mesophase up to continue the pitches.
Good evening. We are Team Mesophase at MIT. We build energy efficient condensers for power generation and also water saving. So let me tell you a truth. Over 10% of global population do not have electricity. And on top of that, our electricity demand is going to increase by half over the next 30 years.
So how do we produce such electricity? By power plants. And in fact, over 3/4 of global electricities are coming from thermal power plants, which convert heat from fossil fuels or renewables into electricity. But a contradictory fact of this power generation is that they also produce a huge amount of greenhouse gas emissions, and also they withdraw the largest amount of fresh water from the US water body. So how do we enhance a power plant's efficiency such that it can both fulfill our energy demand, but also reduce water use? The key is in the condenser. And the reason is that power plants absorb heat from a high temperature heat source and dissipate heat to a low temperature condenser. That temperature difference drives the output. It's intrinsically hard to work with a high temperature heat source, which makes condenser becoming the low-hanging fruit in the system. But even this low-hanging fruit haven't been innovated for decades. Industrial condensers have been using flat metals, which is not great for heat transfer because water will condense and form a thick liquid film on the surface of these flat metals, which is the dominant resistance in thermal resistant network, impeding heat transfer and efficiency improvement. There haven't been much innovation in the space due to the strict requirements for power plant condensers in terms of lifetime, scalability, and cost. So Mesophase is revolutionizing the condenser industry based on an MIT invention called polymer-infused porous surfaces. This surface combined a nanostructure, which is low cost, with a low-cost polymer using some scalable technique such that the surface can repel water in the format of droplets, as you can see in these videos. This way, we can eliminate the thick liquid film and enhance heat transfer. What makes us more excited about this technology is that in lab, we demonstrate over 200 days of lifetime of this surface without degradation. And we had to stop at 200 days just because someone has to graduate. So we believe this surface is more durable than what you see here. And in the condenser field, this is the first time you see a coating that can last long enough and also use very scalable technique and low-cost materials. When we compare this performance to what's available on the market, you will see a record high performance in terms of both heat transfer and lifetime. On the left side of this chart, you will see state-of-the-art in research. There have been some coatings that can significantly enhance heat transfer, but they do not last long enough to be put into practice. And the right bottom corner shows you some enhanced condenser surfaces in industry. They last long, but they do not enhance heat transfer as much. We are on the top right corner of this chart, demonstrating a record high performance in heat transfer, but also can last as long as an industrial coating in a condenser manufacturer. When we implement our technology into a power plant condenser, we anticipate to see up to 7% power output increase, which is equivalent to 30 billion annual market globally. And using this technology, we will also squeeze out 500 terawatts electricity for 1 billion people's electricity demand with just what we have today without building any new power plants. And because we are generating electricity in a more efficient way, of course, we can reduce CO2 emission and water withdrawal. To be specific, we can retain water use for 15 million people using our technology.
Thank you, Yajing. So how do we take this amazing technology to the market? Well, the short answer is in plug and play enhanced condenser tubes. What's a condenser tube? These are the 10-meter long copper, steel, or titanium tubes that go into condensers. The rationale to go into the tube space is that they're relatively straightforward to manufacture, they're low cost, and they let us control our IP and get it into the hands of people who care about it the most. That, of course, is the power plant operators. We can sell directly to the operators through regular maintenance, through either retubing or retrofits. Also, we can get into new builds and greenfield developments by working with the condenser manufacturers who you see in the middle here. All in all, working in tubes gives us a flexible approach to get into the market quickly and cost effectively. This all works because a condenser with our tubes in it has significantly more attractive economics than what you find in the market today. It all starts with manufacturing cost. So as Yajing mentioned, we're using low-cost scalable materials, which means there's a really marginal impact to the total cost of a condenser. At the same time, because we're increasing power output with the same infrastructure, we can charge a premium over what's out there today while still remaining well within the existing willingness to pay band. This, of course, generates strong margins. All of this is possible because we're generating strong value for the end customer, the power plant operator, by generating more power with the infrastructure that's already in the ground. So a 7% improvement in power output is worth about $130,000 per megawatt in net present value. What's great about that is that we can share most of that value with the end customer, the power plant operator, while still generating strong returns for us and our manufacturing partners. The market for condensers is very large globally. About 30 billion turns over every year in the 3.5 terawatt capacity of global steam power production. That said, we're planning to start somewhere where our technology makes a lot of sense and where we can get to market quickly. That's the US geothermal space. That market is about $800 million a year. The rationale to start in geothermal is multifold. So first, it's a very strong use case. As Yajing mentioned, when you have a heat constraint, the value of the condenser is made all the greater. So in geothermal, you're constrained by the heat of the earth, which is fairly hard to change. As a result, the condenser is made even more valuable here. Maybe more important though, is that geothermal plants tend to be small and they're a sustainable source of power. This means that we can get to market quickly and cost effectively with smaller condensers and also benefit from renewable power tailwinds. Finally, most of the geothermal capacity in the US was built in the 50s and 60s. That means that most of these plants are operating way below capacity and they invest frequently in technology like ours just to maintain their power output. All that to say, we plan to pilot in geothermal, learn quickly, and then scale up to larger power production facilities. So everything we've heard over the 30 plus interviews we've done with some of the largest power production companies and manufacturers in the US and the world has indicated that there's very strong demand for this technology and technologies like it. So in talking to Calpine, who's the largest geothermal operator in the US, we learned that they're constantly struggling to maintain power output in their largest plant, geysers. They're excited to explore a pilot with us. Additionally, just a few weeks ago, we won the support of the DOE through their Energy Tech Up competition for geothermal technology. We're excited about these developments, but we know they're just first steps as we step towards much broader energy applications. And as we look ahead, talking to folks like the LA Department of Water and Power, we've learned that there are significant regulatory changes that are causing them to have to change out their infrastructure and condensers. This, of course, is one of the many changes coming to energy over the next several years, but one that we're excited about and one that gives us an edge in getting into the market. So how are we going to get there? Well, today we're testing at the lab scale. As we look ahead, though, we plan to partner with EPRI and the DOE to test in a real plant environment. This will enable us to get into a pilot with one of the geothermal operators before ultimately selling into utilities by 2030. We're led by strong business and technical expertise. Yajing has spent the better part of the last 6 years working on condensation heat transfer at MIT, and I bring 5 years of consulting and investing experience before spending the last 3 years scaling climate tech startups. We're led by an amazing board of industry experts, including Dr. Evelyn Wang, the MIT head of the mechanical engineering department. Thank you. We are Team Messaphase. We are revolutionizing condenser technology to make power production more efficient.
You have about 5.5 minutes for questions.
I had a question about sales cycle. So, you know, the 1% quote is one thing, but it's a historically conservative industry with slow sales cycles. What is in the customer diligence you've done like the key technical milestone beyond your typical reliability and whatnot, but the actual, percentage efficiency target that you believe will create an acceleration of sales cycle, other than sort of what you'd be looking at with just kind of modest efficiency gains in your typical turnover?
That is a great question. And actually, we talked to Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. According to them, just 1% power output increase is huge to them. So when they heard we can increase even like 7%, they are amazed. But to be fair, we only demonstrate in lab scale right now. So also, according to Calpine, we have to demonstrate at larger scale, like 2 bundles testing is necessary before we pilot in a real power plant. Because as you say, they are pretty conservative. They don't want to shut down due to any accidents.
Aaron?
I just have a quick follow-up question about this. So what I was interested in, it looks like this is what is getting asked to you, right? Which is, you said that you had like 200 days of demonstration. Could we just maybe learn a little bit more about what's the real world application of maybe the water that you were using? What is actually coming out and getting used in power plants? And would this material degrade or wear differently if that's the case? The other thing that I think I heard right at the end is that it looks like you will only be ready to deploy by 2030. Is that correct? And what does that timeline entail? And is there any way to start doing deployment sooner that obviously is reliable?
Yeah, definitely. We would like to pilot as soon as possible. But the challenge is, like I said, power plant wouldn't be willing to try your product if you haven't demonstrated at a larger scale. So early stage, like 2025, we plan to have 2 bundles to be tested in collaboration with some pilot plants, hopefully. And if not, then it's going to be similar environment that's similar to power plant condenser. And the way this coating works is it enhances heat transfer on the steam side of the condenser. So we don't change anything that's flowing inside the tube, which is the cooling water cycle. And just by having a more efficient heat transfer, we can decrease the condenser temperature. That would allow us to extract more power out of the cycle. And the 200 days experiment, we haven't seen any degradation, which is a great milestone because people wouldn't like to see any flaking of materials in the system. And in real world, condenser or even just the power plant will have a maintenance cycle every 2 to 5 years. So that's a good time to retrofit or maintain our condenser tubes.
So from a practical standpoint, how do you envision this actually being done? Here you have hardware already in the field, sitting out there. Who is coming in, who is doing the work, replacing tubes, recoding if necessary? What is kind of the work process that you envision? And are you talking to the people who would be part of that work process?
So we are still at very early stage. Right now, the technique we use are lab scale, but the surface we are generating, we see a potential to do techniques such as sintering, which people use to make things on rubber tubes, and also spray coating, which is people use to spray coat our kitchen wire. Those techniques are very, very relevant to making our structures, but we have not yet talked to people in the manufacturing industry to outsource this manufacturing. So we are still navigating if we should do this in-house or give the design criteria and do it outsourced.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just to add to that, the likely early partners look like Graham or Alfa Laval, kind of the condenser manufacturers or tube manufacturers, and the delivery mechanism is likely relying on customer relationships that they've already developed with the plants. That would be the fastest path to market.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Team Mesophase. Brings us to our 15 minutes time. We will jump back into land. for Team Algion Materials with Kim.
Hello, this is Kim. I think the host has to activate my video is what I'm getting a message about. All right, there we are. Am I being heard?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
All right, perfect. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Pendergrass, and I'm one of the co-founders of Algion Materials. I am really excited to share with you what we have been working on tonight. Ooh, how do I advance the slides? There we go, perfect. All right, so Algion Materials really exists to address two of the large issues. One is around plastic pollution, and the other is around the climate impacts from the creation and manufacturing of plastic. So some of you might be surprised to learn that the average useful life of a plastic bag is only 15 minutes. Yet they can take up to 500 years to break down in landfills. These products are being really over-engineered. So the good news is that there is a solution. So Algion Materials is on a mission to fight climate change and reduce plastic pollution. And we do that specifically by creating sustainable and biodegradable plastic alternatives made out of kelp. Now, I don't know if you all know about all the great benefits of kelp, but kelp is an awesome feedstock. So it's regenerative, it's a natural carbon sink, and it requires virtually zero inputs to grow. It doesn't take fresh water, it doesn't take arable land, and really importantly, it doesn't take fertilizer. This solution in particular addresses 9 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals laid out by the United Nations. So let's take a look at it because I know that's what everybody's really excited about. So over here, you'll see this very green plastic hanger. My co-founder and myself started last year pulling seaweed off of the beaches of San Diego, which is where we are based out of. And we took them into our respective kitchens and ruined a lot of coffee grinders, blending them up and making some of these early prototypes. You know, fast forward, honestly, probably about 8 months and hundreds of iterations, both in the formula and the process. And we are starting to create samples and prototypes that look like what you see here in the center, which is really this cup-like formation. And also you can see this rose mold. Now, what I don't have here is that we can also create samples and prototypes of flexible sheets. So think of like plastic bags or saran wrap as well. So when we talk about our material in particular, both the formulation and the process today are protected by trade secrets, and we do have a path to provisional patents, which we are looking at filing later this year. So most importantly, our material is completely biodegradable. It breaks down in months and not hundreds of years. It's lightweight and strong. And this is really important because if it's going to be a true plastic alternative, it's going to have implications in shipping costs. And then finally, it's moldable. So our material is a thermoplastic, and this is important because we are targeting injection molding manufacturing. And we want to make sure that our material can be used in those machines and with their processes without any significant changes. What you'll see is another image here of an early prototype. Notice it's a different color, so it's a little bit of a different formulation there. So you might be asking yourself, who the heck wants to buy kelp plastic? It turns out major brands across the US and honestly the world are making some very public ESG statements about reducing the amount of plastic in their products and lines of business within the next 5 to 10 years. And I have a few listed up here on the screen. Now, there's a problem about this that most people don't know. My co-founder and I spent some time in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is the plastic manufacturing capital of the United States. And we talked to the plastic manufacturers who make the products for these brands. And they told us that, hey, yes, we are getting requirements from these brands that we need to find a better material for them, but we don't have access to anything. And the reason we were there is because Algion Materials was chosen by these plastic manufacturers to enter an accelerator program because of our material. So looking towards the future for future partnerships, which we're really excited about. We decided we needed some more information. And so we have been on a path of customer discovery to really understand the ins and outs of what this plastic alternative would need to look like to work for these customers. To date, we have interviewed over 75 individuals with packaging, product management backgrounds, CSR, and sustainability at the brands you see on your screen, as well as some others. And we really took away kind of three main things. And these are some pull quotes for our interviews. The first is that performance, probably to nobody's surprise, is top of mind. So the material must have the properties that they need. But what's interesting is they actually cared less about the look and feel. Cost. And so cost is, of course, important. And we learned that 55% of consumers are actually willing to pay a little bit more for green and sustainable packaging. And that the final one is that ESG must be built into the margins. And this is important because it implies for us that it's easier to design for something net new than to retrofit something that already exists. So with this information in hand, Algeon Materials has decided to focus in specifically first on the packaging needs of eco-focused consumer packaged goods companies and retailers. And the reason why is quite simple. We could even go a step down and talk about health and beauty brands and natural foods. It's because their consumers care about their products being chemical free. They want the packaging to reflect what they are getting with their products. And then most importantly, they're already willing to pay more for these types of products. This is a huge market. So at a high level, the plastic industry is valued at $580 billion. Now, something that you might remember from earlier this year is that the UN put out an announcement that they are creating a plastic pollution treaty agreement. Now, nobody knows what this means, but it's definitely going to have rippling effects across the plastic industry. We are focused down in the sustainable plastic packaging market valued at $89 billion. Let's talk about the competitive landscape. So we have fossil fuels, and we're all, I would hope, fairly aware of the problems that come with fossil fuels. You might be thinking to yourself, hey, let's just do a little bit better. Can't we just recycle and use recycled plastics? This is actually a pretty complex issue, not only in the US, but abroad as well. And it basically boils down to this. Our waste streams really aren't sophisticated enough to deal with this. The secondary market isn't very large right now. And because of that, they don't want to invest in the infrastructure that is needed to create these recycled plastics. You might be thinking to yourself, hey, plastic blends, let's do some bioplastics, let's do some traditional plastics. It's one step better. The problem is that plastic blends still lead to the creation of microplastics. And in the news in the last month, there were some very horrifying articles about finding microplastics in human blood and in human lungs. And that's, obviously not good. Land-based plastics could be good, but let's remember, we're here because people care about water. They take up arable land, they take up fresh water, and they require fertilizer. And because of this, they also compete for food crops. Algeon Materials plays specifically in the kelp and seaweed market. Now I have three other competitors outlined here for you, not PLA, EvoWare, and Sway. Two of these are international in the UK and Southeast Asia, and there's no indication that they have moved across. One is local, actually to California with me. And really the difference between these three and us is they're focused on flexible packaging. So they're focused on plastic bags. Algeon Materials is not. Yes, we can make plastic bags, we can make flexible packaging, but we are focused on harder resins. And because of that, it opens us up to a different customer segment. This is the team, myself and my co-founder, Rose Fine. Together, we have significant startup experience and experience in new product development. Working alongside with us is Jose Brizuela, who is our lead polymer scientist. He has experience in sustainable material development, biopolymers, and scale-up manufacturing. We are surrounded by an ecosystem of mentors and advisors. I'm running short, so I'm just gonna sail through this. Go-to-market strategy. So where we're starting is we are going to align with smaller brands because we can meet their scale and demand, who are aligned with us and create custom packaging needs for them. We will continue to scale with our capacity. Eventually, we would like to turn over and become feedstock for larger brands, those larger brands that I showed you earlier, and sell directly to the plastic manufacturers. small little case study on unit economics. So we are going to be more expensive. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. But the key is to be a small cost of a product. So let's take Burt Bees, for example, here. You know, we have their little plastic tube. So traditional plastic, this is about 9 cents a material. Our material cost is going to be about 12 cents. So yes, that's, you know, 25% higher. But the key is it's only a really small piece of what that product actually sells for. We have some pro forma statements here. No surprise, it's going up. But basically the key here is year after year, we're going to scale. It's going to require investment to get there. It will allow us to drive down costs as we hit those milestones and grow our team. And then this will give you a little bit more specificity on what we're using. So we are going to open a round likely later this year or maybe very early next year. We have a few milestones to hit before we get there. But with that, we will be filing our patents, finalizing our initial product, and selling to our first customer. We have already raised about 70K of this already. And that's doing that with a team of 3. Over the next 3 years, we will continue to grow, expand our production and our capacity, and grow to a team of 8. So, you know, I want to challenge the notion that plastic pollution is just a fact of life and that we all have to live with it. Algaeon Materials is taking steps to create alternatives that brands can use. And we think this will really move the needle. I greatly welcome any questions and any help anyone can provide. I'm always available to connect offline on LinkedIn as well. Thank you. All right.
3.5 minutes for questions.
Okay. Oren, would you like to go first?
Sure. Can you speak a little bit on how you're thinking about certification, kind of end to end, from kind of carbon output of all the way through, like, you know, if these go into landfills and produce methane, it sometimes people say it's worse than plastic. And so it's an incredibly complicated space, and you're sort of comparing that to plastic in the ocean and potential carbon savings. But so anyway, just talk a little bit about how you're going to sort of, from a brand perspective, third-party validate this, if that is in the plan.
Oh, yeah, it's in the plan. So we're going to go, our you know, long-term target are these large brands, and that's going to be really important to them. So at some point, as we scale up a little bit more, you know, today we're in R&D spaces, but we're going to have to do a life cycle analysis, especially on the carbon impacts of our products. So all the way from sourcing, I don't know if I even talked about this too much, but we're sourcing from commercial kelp farmers in North America. So this is an established industry. We are not going out and raiding the native kelp forests of, you know, the Pacific. Please do not worry there. But yes, what that entire process will look like end to end. It is common in our industry. Others have done it. We're just not there yet, but we will need to do that to sell to those large customers. All right, let's go ahead and go with Mark. You're next up on my screen.
Right, sorry, just finding the mute button. So yeah, I was curious to find out whether this material could be used for you know, bottles that hold liquids and that sort of thing, or whether that's a no-no because of the way that it biodegrades.
No, not necessarily. So we have some early samples that are shelf stable. So I mean, long story short, without going too much into it, and my background is not chemistry, so nobody's going to appreciate my explanation. You know, it can be hydrophobic or hydrophilic. There's different levers we can pull in our formulation to change those. You know, right off the gate, bottles probably aren't going to be what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on something else, but it's definitely possible. And there are, you know, there are some other companies looking at bottles too, which are interesting, not necessarily with kelp plastic that I'm aware of, but with some land-based plastics. All right, Iram?
My hand actually went up last, so please go ahead and call on someone else.
Okay, how about Geeta?
Yeah, I think my question is related to what Oren asked you already, which is, you know, given how much land, you know, how much of a problem landfill waste is, how much is this incrementally going to help us? Yes, it's not plastic, but it's still going to end up in a landfill, right? So have you thought through the disposal piece of it, the end of life piece of it, and how do you net that out?
Yes, we've thought about it. I don't have any like good calculations I can share at this time because some more work will need to be done. But you know, ideally, 90% of plastics today are not recycled, right? They go straight to a landfill. Our thesis is that, you know, when our material goes into a landfill, that it will eventually break down. And I understand that, you know, different types of environments are needed for materials to break down. When we talk about going into freshwater, saltwater, a landfill, even, you know, a composting environment, we still haven't done those tests yet. But our early at-home tests suggest that it should break down. All right.
Great. And that actually brings us to time.
Okay, thank you. I can also take any questions in the chat as well.
So thank you to Algion. And we can jump. So this brings us to our last pitch of the evening with Waterbot. And so we have JC to present over Zoom, and we have Jimmy here from the team in person. So we'll have a little bit of a hybrid opportunity for the Q&A session.
Great. Hello, everyone. So this is JC from Waterbot team. We're a robotics company utilize autonomous technology to solve the water problem. So I was born in the southeastern part of China. I'm sorry, the control. 1 second, please. Okay, it's working. Great. So I was born in the southeastern part of China, a region which is hot and humid with lots of streams and rivers. When I was a kid, I used to play with my friends by the river ran through the forest behind my house. I remember the river, the greenish color and the leafy, even musty smell of the water. Those are deeply ingrained in my memory. For a very long time, I thought most of the river were like this. And it wasn't until I grew up that I realized that all these greenish and slimy texture and a foul odor were because of algae. Around the world, many rivers, lakes, and even seas encountered a similar algal problem. If water is our source of life, the increasingly polluted surface water means our life quality has already been compromised. The harmful algae are caused by eutrophication of water. Algae that feed on nutrients growing to scum on the water surface release algal toxins that result in countless fish kills and human units every year. It also increases operational costs of water-intensive industries. And it also threatened the water supply security through clogged pipelines, unplanned outages, and loss of production. In fact, HEBs cost the global economy an estimated $17 billion last year. Climate change will only exacerbate this $17 billion problem as an increasing temperature makes bloom more prevalent and widespread. Moving on to the next slide. As you can see, reported cases of freshwater HEBs in the United States have increased 6.5-fold in the last decade. The HEB map on the right-hand side of the slide shows that this is a global problem as America, Asia, Europe, and even the Gulf region in the Middle East have all been severely impacted by such blooms. The harmful algal bloom has caused water managers in both public and private sectors headache. Over the last 9 months, the team interviewed over 30 water managers from municipality and private companies, and many of them are dissatisfied with the passive management. So just give a little bit of context here. The industry currently relies on the spot measurement, which is a singular on-site measurement through extracting water samples for later analysis in the lab. This monitoring measurement cannot cover the entire water body and only produce lagging result. If a bloom occurs, water manager will have to spend more money on labor to clean up the lake, which actually drive up the operational costs significantly. So here I quote words from a water manager at a top private lake management firm. He said, "I wish we could have 24/7 data on my hand to tell my clients when a bloom will occur so that we can perform treatment ASAP to avoid bad blooms." Moving on to the next slide. The market currently provides a few options to monitor algae growth in water. So aside from lab testing we just mentioned, which costs approximately $200 to $500 per test, some people utilize buoys or satellite remote sensing. However, from what we learned from our interview, the data quality of buoys and satellite were not ideal. A buoy can only detect quality of water at a specific location. Remote sensing, on the other hand, cannot detect algal blooms in the water body with the diameters less than 9 kilometers. And actually, the data quality is greatly affected by weather conditions. Therefore, we believe that what the market needs is a continuous monitoring measurement which provide real-time quality data and an easy-to-use 24/7 early warning system. That's why we designed WaterBot. WaterBot is a solution. It includes 3 components: our patented autonomous robot, our patent-pending intelligent algae sensor for real-time algae detection, and finally, our AI-powered SaaS platform, which will analyze water quality data, create a water map, make a recommendation, and predict harmful algae outbreaks. So here is a video that showcases a demo of our robots on Charles River. In this video, the robot is navigating to the destination using its onboard LiDAR and control algorithm. So relying on our patented autonomous technology, this solar-powered robot will operate in sync and intelligently navigate complex surface water environment. Each robot can actually actively scan 1,000 acres within 24 hours. Our patent-pending sensing technology on the right-hand side utilizes pattern recognition to identify harmful algae species. The measurement takes place continuously by logging and uploading data to the cloud through IoT application. For HAB prediction, I like to emphasize that the predictive analytics we have for our clients will be iterated and improved as our machine learning approach collects more and more data from all of our robots. Therefore, we are able to tailor solution for all of our subscribers with a much lower price. So as you can see, we have a 3-tier pricing model. 70% of our revenue is generated by subscription service with access to hardware and HAB predictive analytics. We also sell autonomous robots starting from $1,800. So for the price of less than 4 lab tests, customer can build their own prediction models if they want. In addition to service and product sales, we also generate revenues from licensing our algorithm and sensing technologies. So we are currently one of the few robotics companies that actually use autonomous technology to combat the algae problem. This gives us a competitive advantage in terms of data quality and area coverage, allowing us to develop the most accurate algae prediction model. In the long run, we hope to develop modular water treatment kits that can be attached to bots and allow for timely on-site algae treatment. As we mentioned before, our first target market is the lake management market in the United States. So we mainly serve municipal drinkable water source as well as recreational water source. As we see our solutions being applicable to a variety of scenarios and use cases, we intended to expand into other freshwater markets with algae problems and eventually the saltwater market. We also intended to move from a local to a global scale in 5 years, because the HAB problems is very severe in Asian and European countries. Moving on to the next slide. We have a very strong founding team. Dr. Wang and Dr. Zheng are my co-founders, and they are scientists at MIT Sensible City Lab and MIT CSL Lab, and they have extensive expertise in robotics, autonomous vehicle, and water pollution treatment. They have filed numerous patents in the past. In the future, they will be in charge of R&D process. My name is JC Su. I'm another co-founder. I'm currently an MBA MPP student at Harvard and Dartmouth. I've worked in government for many years, and I've experience in working with external and internal stakeholders. So I'll be in charge of business development and strategic planning, as well as government relations. So we'll wrap up quickly and briefly discuss our future plans. So because our technology is fairly mature, we expect to have a prototype by the end of 2022 and first pilot in July 2023. So we have already secured our first customer who would like to do a pilot with us. We think in the first 2 years, we will have 20 subscribers to use our service. So what we need is funding and your support to tackle the global harmful algae problem. Please refer WaterBot. Thank you. Please let us know if you have any questions. I think Oren, you're the first person. I think you're on mute. Can you hear me? Oren?
Yeah, sorry. Chose the last presentation to wait. So from robotics are notoriously CapEx and OpEx intensive. How are you viewing the offset and kind of financing of the CapEx and OpEx vice kind of the value proposition that you're proposing?
Could you please rephrase your question a little bit?
Robots with LiDARs and whatnot are, there's generally associated with significant maintenance costs and operational costs, as well as kind of training and whatnot, in addition to the cost of building the system up front. Okay. Can you kind of speak to, maybe the expected revenue per robot and whether you expect that to align with the sort of life cycle costs of the robot system?
Got it. So based on our calculation, the unit price, that one of our competitive advantages to lower the robotic cost. So basically right now we assume, based on our calculation, each robot will cost $1,800 and we are going to use camera instead of LiDAR. So that will entirely drive down the cost. And I think the robots is our strength. My co-founder, Dr. Wang, can explain the cost structure a little bit here.
Yeah. So normally our camera only costs kind of 100, and also the CPU and the mechanical structure, this kind of stuff. Also, we have a low cost from if we use the supply chain from China. So yeah, and we will use this low cost CPUs and also the other sensors. And for the additive bloom detection stuff, we are also developing more low cost sensors to detect multiple species of the additive blooms. Yeah, thank you.
So I have a sort of related question, which is, so when you put sensors into these sort of open bodies of water, they end up growing biofilm on them. And so you end up either having to deal with that locally or having some maintenance program to get rid of it. What are your thoughts on how you're going to tackle the problem of your sensors themselves fouling in this water?
I think Dr. Zheng can answer this question. He attended it in person.
Hi, Mark. I'm in person in the conference. So I think I can answer this question. Actually, the biofouling is the huge problem for sensor. So that's why we choose flow-through sensor. We have the preconditional, which can fill out some the dirties. And also we are planning to use clean water to rinse the sensor every morning or every night when it stops sensing the water quality.
Okay.
Anders?
Yes, so I know you compared yourself to the fixed buoys, and the one you showed in the picture is like 50K or something like that. Now there are some solutions out there which are an order of magnitude lower, actually 2 orders of magnitude lower. If those types of solutions are available, would that kind of mess up your economics?
I think the most advantages of our technology is the autonomous part. We can use the autonomous boat to detect the hotspot which have the pollution very often. So that's one way the buoy cannot do that.
So I think one of the strengths, to rephrase that, is our algorithm. So basically, because we as an autonomous robot can collect a lot of data points, and because of the self-learning algorithm, we are able to understand the hotspots, algal hotspot in the water. So it will save a lot of like human capital, as well as the cost in the long run, for the water manager to better manage the water. I think that's one of the strengths that the buoy company cannot compete with against us.
Okay, thank you.
Aram?
I actually have, I guess, a follow-up question. What I'm wondering is, I mean, I understand that there's a lot of automation in what's getting learned, right, in your sensors. But could I just hear maybe a little bit more about what's the training required within water departments or water agencies? And how is that going to be handled? Like how will that process be covered? Is that
That's a great question, because when we when we did interview, one problem they mentioned will be the technical barriers. They don't understand how to operate that. So basically, we're thinking about sending representative to our client site and basically teaching them how to use the robot and like what is the protocol of like clean up that site, clean up the sensor every day. And also we have a 24/7 customer support team, so that if they have any problem, they can always reach out to us. Those are the current approach we can think of.
Right, and that just sounds to me like it's really going to make this like a big thing for an agency to take on, right? So obviously the agency needs a lot of capacity to be able to, deploy this solution.
So we actually, because as we mentioned, we have the 3-tier pricing model. So basically, if the agency wants to subscribe to our service, then they can take a hands-free approach. Actually, they are not going to care about, they are not going to take care of everything. We will tailor the solution for them, and we will deploy that, deploy the machine, and also do all the customer related tasks for them. So basically, it can technically drive down the operational costs for those water municipalities.
Great. Thank you so much, JC and judges. That brings us to the time. I don't mean to interrupt the conversation, but we're sitting to our 15 minutes. So with that, that brings us to the end of our 6 pitches. So thank you everyone for sharing. Thank you judges for asking insightful questions, and thank you audience for dealing with my emceeing and tech skills. Thank you. So I will now pass it over to Jane to lead us through the end of the evening and into the judging.
Can we put the slides? All right. So thank you to all the presenters. At this time, our judges are going to head into the deliberation room and should have first, second, and third place winners for us in a bit. In the meantime, we're going to hear from our second keynote speaker. And while he is on the screen, we're also going to put up a QR code that you can go ahead and scan and vote for the People's Choice Award. So if you came to support a team, this is your time to play a very important role. Okay, great. So our second keynote speaker of the night is George Hawkins. He is the CEO and founder of Moonshot, which is a leadership and innovation-focused consulting platform. Prior to this, he served in many roles, one being the CEO and general manager at DC Water for 8 years. In that role, he drove innovations across multiple disciplines, including finance, communication, and engineering. We are thrilled to have him with us tonight, as he also brings educational experience, holding a degree from Princeton University and Harvard Law School, and has taught for many years environmental law and policy at the Princeton Environmental Institute. So I will pass it over now to George, and the QR code will also be up on the screen.
Thank you, Jane. Just want to make sure that you all can hear me well. Is everything working?
Yes. And if everyone else can turn off their cameras, we will have you on the screen and you're ready to go. Thank you.
Not sure if that's a good thing, but I want to wish my greetings and welcome to all of you there at MIT. I am sorry I could not be there in person. I love the MIT water program. I've participated in the past, and I just love what you're doing. I just wanted to tell you a story about how technology changes the world of a water utility. I got the call on the bat phone. Every water utility chief has a bat phone on them 24 hours a day. This was a late summer call on a Sunday night. It woke me up. I was just about to go to sleep. It was the head of our emergency management office, and he said, "You got to run to your window. We have terrible flooding north in Washington, D.C." I ran to my window, looking north, up towards the Capitol Dome. In fact, from my window, I lived in the Navy Yard at the time, I could see the Capitol Dome bright white in the distance, and behind it were roiling red and dark clouds that looked very biblical. And what had happened, it's something called a derecho. Maybe some of you have heard of it. I had never heard of them before, but now I have, because they're starting to happen with extreme weather. And we had so much rainfall to the north. There was none falling down by the Navy Yard. These are very localized storms. That point will come back in a moment, by the way. That I rushed downstairs to get up to where there was flooding in basements, and the streets were flooded to a degree that cars were floating and people were being rescued by fire department. And I drove north up to the neighborhood this was in. By the way, I thought as I was driving, maybe this was not a good time to have an electric car, but I was driving my electric car quietly up, and then it hit the rain. I don't know if you've ever had that edge of a rainstorm where it wasn't raining at all, totally silent in the electric car. And then you hit the rainstorm where it's coming down in a torrent. It was so loud on the roof, it sounded like someone was playing the drums on the roof of my car. And then I got through it and the rain had stopped. So I jumped out of the car. I ran up to the street corner. This is Rhode Island, in a neighborhood called Bloomingdale. The mayor had come, the city administrator, the council member, for all the newscasters, because there's this dramatic footage of people being rescued from cars. And here's what had happened. Washington, D.C., like 850 cities throughout the United States, have what are called combined sewers. Combined sewers are just what they sound like. They're combining stormwater off the street. So when that big rainfall hits, all that stormwater goes into the storm drain, and you wonder where that water goes. It goes into the same sewer pipe that also has all the sewage coming in it from every building. That's called a combined sewer. By the way, at the time they were built, they were the technical marvel of the time, because streets were so incredibly covered with all sorts of refuse, including, by the way, millions of pounds of horse manure. That's a story for another time. But all of that would be washed off the streets at every rainstorm down into these huge combined sewers. In Washington, D.C., the combined sewers at their largest are 22 feet in diameter. Like when you see those movies with trucks driving underground, that's how big these are. 22 feet, beautifully built back in the 1890s, 1900s. And they fill up with so much rainfall that they fill to the top. And then they become pressurized because so much flow is coming into the sewer that it starts pushing its way back out of the sewer. And what had happened in this neighborhood is that the flow had gotten so intense, boom, it shot the manhole covers off the street, giant, heavy irons like a shotgun. Lucky no one was injured, and would push their way, the sewage and rainfall combined would push its way back up sewer lines till it got into basements, and then would blow holes in walls, fill up basements. And this is a combination of untreated sewage and stormwater with all the crud that's on the streets, all mixed together in streets, in basements, and by the way, overflowed to billions of gallons worth to the Anacostia River, the Rock Creek, and the Potomac, and the rivers of all of those 850 cities where combined sewers was the design. Now, I toured the neighborhood with the council member from that ward that night, and it went down into, I came up around a corner on a street called Flagler, and there was someone moving their furniture out into the yard, even though it was still raining. What's happening? Well, we went into his house, and the flow that had come from the sewer had punched a hole in his basement wall and filled up his basement with sewage and rainwater to the degree that all of the furniture had been floated. And he was taking the furniture out, trying to save some of it and to get it out of that combination of sewage and rainfall. Now, why do I tell the story? Because that is a problem that needs to be solved. The challenge is it's unbelievably expensive to do so. In Washington, D.C., the solution we implemented for the most part is the same kind of solution that the Romans would have built, which was bigger sewers. So for the last 10 years, we have been putting in very sophisticated machines, 100 feet underground, 10 stories underground, building these gigantic underground tunnels so that that overflow, rather than pushing its way up to a street or into a basement or overflowing to a river, drops down drop shafts into these giant underground tunnels, 22 feet in diameter. They go for miles to capture and convey that flow so it doesn't contaminate our streets and our rivers and can go to the treatment plant to be cleaned at the cost of $2.6 billion. Let me say the number again, $2.6 billion. The most expensive public works project in Washington, D.C. is not about affordable housing. It's not about schools. It's not about public parks. It's about building giant tunnels underground that people will never see. Now, I also did rate hearings, 70 of them, where I had to present the case to our ratepayers to pay for $2.6 billion. That's, by the way, on top of all the other work we were doing. And I had people constantly come to me and say, you persuaded me that this work needs to be done. I remember in particular in Ward 4, there's a lot of seniors. An older woman came to me and showed me her water bill. It had gone up by more than triple because of these costs. And her hand was shaking. She said, I agree with what you're doing. I'm in fixed income. I'm a senior. I don't have any more money. And this has gone up so high, I'm having to cut back now on food and other things that I need to live. What am I supposed to do? Now, that's the world that utility professionals are caught between, solving problems that need to be solved because of the catastrophic consequence, and raising the money, not the same as raising money for a startup company, but raising the money from people, often whom are significantly poor, to solve the problems. And either you do one and you charge the other, or you don't do one and everybody's at risk. Today in the water sector is unlike any other time in the last 200 years. This is the time that more technology has flowered for water than ever before. And I picked the sewer because I've heard Erin speak before about storm sensor. I was quite taken by her presentation to kick off. But what she's doing helps. And let me describe how much it means. Another city, the city of Cincinnati, had a $700 million, these are called long-term control plans. Same idea as what I just described for DC, and it was going to bankrupt the city where more than 30% of the people were low income at poverty level. And what happened is that PhD students from the university came forward and said, but wait a minute, when you build these underground tunnels, you're doing it based on designs triggered by analysis of past storms with a safety margin built in. What they did is install the kind of sensors that Erin is building with Storm Sensor, and they installed them all in the system. And all of a sudden, the phrase that I've heard is turned on the lights in the sewer system. Now, what this meant, remember I said that I was standing down in the Navy Yard looking north and it wasn't raining at all where I lived, yet it was raining so hard to the north that it was causing this enormous problem in the sewer system that was backing up and blowing into people's basements. Well, that's an interesting fact that when you sensorize a system and you get to know what's happening in all of it, what they determined is, oh my gosh, if we could route the flow from the part of the city where it's overflowing to the part where it isn't, we can use the capacity that already exists without needing to build huge additional tunnels. And that's what they did. It's a smart sewer network. And they did another creative thing, which wasn't so much technology, but founded on technology, because they created a pricing mechanism, artificial intelligence. In the part of the city when the storm hits and the areas in the water and the sewer start to rise, the price of capacity in that sewer goes up because there's less of it. The more and more flow that goes in, there's less and less space. Just like any supply and demand, you charge more for the remaining space. Other sewers in the city that have remaining space, the price is lower, and an artificial intelligence automatic system channels flow from wherever the price is high to where the price is low. So it's an artificial intelligence network using a market-based concept to move flow around in the city to maximize existing resources. What was the outcome? This is the city of South Bend, and the university was the University of Notre Dame. The outcome is that South Bend saved $500 million in what would have bankrupt the poor city that it is, because enterprising minds figured out how to deploy sensors to more optimally use the resources they had. Now, I could tell you a dozen stories like that, but I'll tell you one more, which is sanitary sewer. There's other sewers that are only sewage flow. They overflow. Well, EPA will require you to go out and build crews. You need trucks and personnel to clean them on a regular basis based on past data of what's happened. A similar network of sensors, you don't have to send a crew because the network can tell you what's happening in the sewer before it gets a blockage. And then you only mobilize a crew when you need to. The city of Grand Rapids faced $1 billion to manage sanitary sewer overflows, but using sensors to target a response rather than this sort of old-fashioned just do everything all the time, got the price down. They're still pricing it out, but it's between 30 and 50 million. $1 billion to 30 to 50 million. Now, I tell these stories because that is what the companies that you heard tonight, what you and the audience can be devising, which is a lifesaver for utilities and the people they serve in every community. Every single community that has a sewer has the challenge of a sanitary sewer overflow. Every single community can use sensors to reduce the costs of responding. But here's the special kicker today. This is why now you, at this moment, are the right people at the right time doing the right issues at a special moment in history. Because the bipartisan infrastructure law is channeling $55 billion into the water sector. That is federal spending that we have not seen since the construction grants program of the 1970s. It's a once in a lifetime infusion of funds over at least 5 years and probably longer by the time it actually gets spent. So there is a permanent degree of funding that's going to be coming into the sector. And here's the other component, is that the Biden administration has Justice 40. They want to make sure that these funds are not just funding DC water. We had $1 billion CapEx and OpEx budget, but small and underserved communities that aren't so big, so that they can benefit from the kind of technology improvements that the big utilities are more used to. So here is what is exciting about what's happening today. First, it's breathtaking the degree to which technology is leaping forward and enabling utilities and the people they serve to not only save money, but to protect the environment better. It's both. So in that sanitary sewer overflow example I gave, in San Antonio, where they saved over 100% of their costs by using sensors, they reduced their sanitary sewer overflows to 0. That means no sewage going into basements, no sewage going into roadways, and the incredible threat to public health and the environment that ensues. So not only is the environment better, but they're saving enormous amounts of cost to do it. That is our path forward. And what I foresee for those of you in the room, for the entrepreneurs that are on the stage, and for Aaron and all the rest who struggle through all the travails of building a new company, is that for the next 5 to 10 years, the focus will be not only on funding the biggest utilities, and that's where a lot of entrepreneurs tend to go. Let's see if we can get DC Water to implement something, which is not a terrible place. It's a huge organization, but there's going to be money and focus about how we can use these funds to support smaller communities, rural communities, low-income communities, adopt and plan. Now, in my experience for an entrepreneur, the advantage of a smaller community is they're simpler to understand. It's simpler to set up a pilot and practice. And there will be 40% of the $55 billion that is going to be targeted to projects for that sector specifically. By the way, it's also bipartisan, because another wonderful attribute is it's going to be supported by both sides of the aisle, which is rare in Washington, D.C. But these are small rural communities in red states, underserved in small communities in blue states. It's both. So it has support from every kind of political leader to make sure that this program goes forward. So, Jane, I'm never quite sure of where we are in the timing of the evening, so I don't want to speak too long. But I just want to say the promise that I feel is true today. If you had visited water utilities for the last 150 years, you would have seen pretty much the same thing at those facilities for most of those times. Primary treatment, that's sedimentation, secondary, maybe some tertiary treatment. Today, the technology is changing almost by the day. By the way, what is Moonshot? I left DC Water despite loving working there, because Moonshot is a startup. Just like Aaron, I've been staggered at how hard startups are to form and develop. I've made every startup mistake you can make. My biggest lesson is to focus. I heard that in one of the questions, is make sure you know exactly what you're doing and stick to it, and be good at something and really hit that out of the park. Because I've been pulled in a lot of different directions and have had to learn discipline and focus. But I formed a Moonshot to help small and underserved communities identify and implement exactly the kind of ideas that are being presented on the stage today and that you may have on your mind as you go through your classes. Interesting for me, we're working with 5 small drinking water utilities in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. Their biggest single issue, harmful algal blooms. They've asked us to figure out how we can help them. The monitoring is so expensive. And for a small utility, when there's a harmful algal bloom, they often have to close down their water intakes so that the toxins that are formed don't get sucked into the drinking water system. So then the question is, well, where are they going to go for a backup drinking water source? Is that drilling another well? Is that another water source? Or do people immediately go to expensive bottled water? So harmful algal blooms, one of the presentations tonight, was exactly on our mind. Some of the biggest innovations we did at DC Water was energy. It's interesting that one of the largest users of energy in the United States is water systems. You ever carried a gallon of water around, you realize how heavy it is. Every water system is moving thousands of gallons, millions of gallons of water around, which is weight, which takes power. We're moving thousands or millions of gallons of wastewater around, which is weight and power. Then through treatment cells, the largest single power user in Washington, D.C. was DC Water. And most of the innovations we adopted were to reduce our power costs so that we could save ratepayer money. So I was really taken by the presentations you saw tonight. I am taken by the ideas that you must have on your mind and at this moment, given that federal funding that is coming to the forefront like we've never seen before, and a focus on the technology transformation that it can drive. The last thing I'll say, and then Jane, I'll turn it back to you, is in the last big federal infusion of funds, and it wasn't really water per se, but this was at the stimulus bill after the banking crisis, ARRA stimulus funds. And I actually was on both sides of DC government. I issued the funds when I was running one agency, and then I came over to DC Water and I was accessing those funds. And the funds were used for what was called then shovel-ready projects, which meant building and replacing essentially what you've got with something new, but just exactly what you have in place. Fast, easy design, let's put it in place. But it was a terrible loss in some respects, because at the time of replacing an old pump or an old fire hydrant or a part of a pipe, we didn't update it with a sensor, a flow sensor, a pressure sensor, or any of the kinds of technologies you've just heard about. The phrase that's being used today is shovel-worthy projects. We want the funds that are our money. This is our tax money that is now going to go to build water infrastructure, that we don't just build what we've had. We build something new that's cheaper, that's more effective, that's more efficient, and that incorporates this breathtaking change in digital technology, in the ability of self-transmission and 5G and all of the components that can be brought to bear. Not that there aren't legions of challenges, which I know, I'm sure that Erin has faced as she's built her product. The first sensor that they built in South Bend deteriorated in one day because of the hydrogen sulfide that's in a sewer system. Sewer folks know that, but tech folks building the sensors didn't. Well, that's the kind of learning we'll get. But the opportunity for you to create the next generation of ideas going into a marketplace flooded with funds to transform shovel-worthy projects. With organizations like Moonshot, by the way, if any of you are interested, we have wonderful internship possibilities. We work directly with underserved utilities to identify and adopt these kinds of technologies, and then transform a sector so it's more effective, cleans the environment, and saves costs for people who are of low income or for anybody, for any of us. That is something that's worth getting really fired up about, firing through all of the challenges that Erin mentioned up front. As she said, despite it all, the opportunity you have to change the world, to make a difference at this moment in time, and for the years that you're coming out of school for the next 5 to 10 is breathtaking. And it's the chance for you to work at the side of angels and deploy all of the knowledge and experience that you have to really transform the world in which we live. So it's been a delight to be with you this evening. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I hope I can come visit you in Cambridge for the next one of your programs. Jane, I'll turn it back over to you unless there's any questions from the crowd, and see where your voting's going with your judges.
Great. Actually, that is a perfect segue. Thank you, George. You are a great storyteller, so thank you for bringing some energy late in the evening. So we are actually going to do a quick 5-minute Q&A with both George and Erin, so both of our speakers. So if you are in Zoom world, we have set it up that if you just raise your Zoom hand, we will be able to unmute you and you can go ahead and talk. And if you are in the room, feel free to just stand up and Erin will pass you one of the mics. So I'll pass it over to Erin, and we will just give people a minute to raise a Zoom hand or bring your question from the audience. And then in 5 minutes, we'll have the final announcements. Okay. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. So what am I supposed to do?
If there's anyone in the Zoom reel, feel free to just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. And I can kick us off with the first question for either of you to get it started. So seeing the student pitches tonight and remembering your journey, what are some of the #1 tips or pieces of advice, small to large, that you would give to the teams seeing kind of in what stage they're at the moment?
I can go.
One
of the things that I would suggest is just looking at the stage and what you're hoping to achieve. Raise more money to start, because it's just going to be hard. And if you can raise it and you're at the spot where you've got such an incredible product, you've got traction, you have an opportunity, take it. And if you have the opportunity to raise more money, do that, because that will get you farther, and that will allow you to hit more milestones and do better the next time too.
Adding to what Erin said, my reaction actually to these presentations was quite positive overall, for a reason that I often find a challenge, which is folks that are, and I'm not one of them, I'm a lawyer by training, but folks who are really good at technology and have solutions often fixate on the technology itself rather than the problem it's solving. And at least for most of the audience that I'm in, if you come into a utility who's going to ultimately be not your only buyer, but a perhaps a very significant buyer of the technology you have, and you start with a complicated description of a technology, then the utility won't know what it matters. Why does it matter to them? And telling a story for the problem that it solves, and that you've identified a problem in concert with those who would be the market for it, to me starts in such a better place, because you have caught the interest. Here's what it does, here's how much, here's what it costs, here's the problems it solves, here's how in your world, not mine, where I love building these things and all, but in your world, our idea will help solve problems and the issues that you face every day, and make it, and if it in fact does, cost less or solve other problems in your supply chain, whatever that issue may be. Now you've caught my attention because you've made the presentation, A, with a story that's interesting to follow, and B, from my perspective, rather than someone who says, I've got this really cool gadget and here's how it works. I want to know first how it solves something that matters to me. The last thing I'll say is that something I did like about a lot of the presentations as well was interviews. The degree to which any entrepreneur, and we were flooded at DC Water with folks coming with ideas, if they were building those ideas with us, so that we understood, A, they understood what our problems were that they were trying to solve, and we understood what the heck they were doing, and there was an interplay. So by the time that idea came forward, a lot of the operational challenges had been worked out because we were working in collaboration. That, of course, means getting the attention of someone in the marketplace. But I liked all the interviewing that was being done to really understand how the user would see, use, and benefit from the ideas at hand.
To add to that just quickly, one of the things that I made a mistake on early on pitching, I was thinking about investors, and I tell you what Storm Center does. I didn't tell you why we do what we do. I didn't tell you the story behind that because that wasn't the point of the presentation. But I thought that was for customers, and investors wanted something else. But investors want the same why that customers have, because that's how the investors are going to make their money too. And that's what makes it meaningful for anyone to get involved in the work that you're doing. Also, everyone's work is positively astonishing, and I feel a bit slow compared to y'all.
Great. I think we have one question from Zoom World.
Hi, George, I actually have a question for you. So as we mentioned that our first go-to-market is municipalities, I'm just wondering, do you have any tips for us to pitch our idea to the government as well as the water, drinkable water facility?
It's a great question. And I'm not sure, I couldn't tell, JC, whether you're at the point of pitching it directly to a municipality, like it's that far along, or whether you're pitching it as a pilot. So let's try something, and this would be a way to do it. And actually, you and I may need to talk after this, because like I said, harmful algal blooms are coming up as issues that we're being asked about. Moonshot is all utility veterans. We're all utility people trying to help our brethren. It's a nonprofit. Like I said, anyone out there in the audience interested in learning about the water world, you come join us. We have a really fun group. But we're not the ones who know all the solutions. We just understand how the world works in the utility world and try to make those connections. And I think that might be interesting to think of where we could find a place or two to run a pilot, because some of the questions that were being asked of you and your team, how do you manage the algae that gets into it? Is it easy to operate? Municipal conditions are brutal. As Aaron said, it's unbelievable how hard and hardy your equipment needs to be when it's out there functioning in all the various weather conditions and all the rest. But I think the notion of how we would construct a pilot and make it useful and valuable to a utility, here's the payoff and benefits that we think we can gain in your world. Always think of how this would benefit. I also completely agree with Aaron just said, I'm raising money to do our nonprofit to help underserved communities. And we have changed not who we are all these people in utilities, we know how to do these things. No, we try to start now to a funder. Here are the things we can help underserved communities achieve. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the outcomes and the outputs that their money can fund. Of course, they want a business plan and know how it's going to make money, but that is really important. And Aaron mentioned that, and I've really been stunned by that as well. But folks want to know their money is not just making money, but making a difference. And I think anyone in this field has got a great pitch on that, as long as they think that way.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for tailoring this speaker session and Q&A to our teams so much. Thank you, George. Thank you, Aaron. I'm going to hand it back over to Jen.
Can I take this out easily? I feel a little. Is there an echo? Oh, okay. So first and foremost, thank you to all the teams for the wonderful pitches. The judges obviously had a lot to think about. So we'll start first with the Audience Choice Award. So that's $5,000. And that goes to Algion Materials. So great job. You can turn your camera on, I suppose, as I announced, but congrats on that. And now third place also actually goes to Algion Materials. So great job, team. And that is an award of $10,000. For second place, that's $15,000, and that goes to Living Waters Systems. Great job, team. All right, and the winner of our 2022 pitch competition, the winner of $20,000 is Mesophase. Does the team want to come up as well? Congrats, and we get to hold the big check. Yeah, let's do it. Congrats.
This is the first time I've held a pitch.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
All right. I know. And you're personally welcome because apparently I signed it. So, yeah. Thank you all for being here. Again, thank you to all of the teams for the pitches. We're very, very inspired of all the great work that you're doing. And for everyone here in person, we do have dessert, and we still have a cash bar that will be available for the next, I think, 30 to 45 minutes. The deck is also still open. And for everyone who joined remotely, thank you so much. Thank you for your engagement, and we look forward to seeing all of you again next year. So thank you.